My name is Hemant and I welcome you to the Inkpothub media. Today's interview is very special. We have a veteran from the IT and ITS industry with 20 years plus experience. We have Miss Sirisha P, who has worked with tech giants like Microsoft, Value Labs, RoundSquare, and is now presently SVP at Signity Labs, where she handles data and insights vertical. An engineering graduate from the prestigious NIT Warangal. We are so glad to have you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thanks for taking time and doing this conversation with me. I hope my journey is relevant and useful to a lot of people that are listening to this.
Sure. They will love it. Let me tell our audience that after a very high growth career, which she is currently pursuing also, she decided to do the unthinkable for many people. She enrolled for a PhD program at the prestigious Mahindra University School of Management. So, ma'am, the first question is, after having a very grilling, high growth and uphill career, what made you choose to do this trapeze thing and go for the PhD program?
Yeah, that in a lot of ways is unthinkable, I guess. But you know what? Today, the tech industry is like movies, right? Like they say in the movies, you are as good as your previous release. So that's what tech has become. Things are changing so quickly. Everything is about being in the know, of course, having a background, but being able to understand and assimilate a lot of information that is being thrown at us in the tech industry. That is the cusp of where we are right now in the IT industry, and especially in the IT services industry. While always it has been important, I guess the aspect of learnability, and more importantly, building that depth, right? And while also having that breadth of information. Typically in the corporates and enterprises, everybody calls it the T-shape. So having that breadth as well as the depth and having learnability, those have become extremely critical and relevant today in the tech world. So like you said, my career also has been extremely, peaks and sudden jumps and leaps. So I worked in Value Labs for 17 years, then grew through the ranks, had a good office of my own, a large team and stuff like that. Then I decided I wasn't learning enough. I moved to Microsoft as an individual contributor. That was a jump in itself. And then I said, when I was getting settled in the job in Microsoft, that is when I decided, you know what, there's so much of work that's happening in the world today. Maybe I should become an entrepreneur. And then I started my entrepreneurial journey. We did that successfully well for about 3.5, 4 years. And then we recently sold off a company to Signity Technologies, which is based out of Hyderabad. And that kind of shows you the career path that I've had as well, right? The sudden leaps and jumps. What I felt personally when I was going through this acquisition journey was this is probably the time for me to develop deeper skills and synthesize the knowledge, right? So it's very easy to get trapped in the day-to-day work and read and just move on. But I wanted to kind of give some method to that madness, if you will, synthesize that knowledge, and that's probably why I took this journey. It still feels surreal sometimes, but yeah, that's the background, I guess.
So, how was your family's reaction when you said that I'm going to go for a PhD, going back to school?
Yeah, I have 2 teenage kids. So teenage kids don't care for anybody else in the world. So the initial reaction or the first impression that I got from them was they don't care. But then when I was talking to them and we were discussing at home as to what this is going to look like, it was very clear that they wanted me to do what I wanted to do. So yeah, they were in that sense very supportive, and they're like, why can't you do it? It's okay, you will just go ahead and finish it off, just don't think twice about it. My husband definitely was very apprehensive, and I think he still is. I am not a nice person to be around when I have deadlines, so I think he knew that I would make his life miserable, so he was a little apprehensive. But yeah, we're getting along. Yeah, it's absolutely fine right now.
Great. I mean, this has to be an uphill journey because there is so much value addition that is going to happen on the way. Yeah. And yes, like we have worked with interviewed hundreds of scholars, and the thing is very common in between them, that the PhD makes you very, very peculiar and very particular about deadlines. And there are
Right.
many deadlines.
Yeah,
So there are weekly,
true.
there are monthly, and going back to school is very overwhelming for the first few months at least.
Absolutely.
Can you recall a specific incident or an interaction that made you click the apply now button?
Oh, okay. So again, just to kind of yeah, this is a personality type thing, right? So I've always been a very impulsive person, very, very impulsive, impulsive decision maker. If there was one term to define me, that's probably what it would be. But then I actually deliberate quite a bit internally. It's not like I have a conversation with 10, 20 people and keep talking about just the same thing over and over again. I keep internally deliberating a lot about a certain stuff, and then I impulsively take a decision eventually. So I wouldn't say there was one specific incident as such, but then um, typically what happens is in corporate world, you end up trivializing everything. You are for that. And again, I am in a role where I am supposed to be in front of the customers, doing consulting work, doing solutioning work and stuff like that. What that means is you have to rely on the corpus of knowledge that you've gained, but at the same time, you should also be able to think on your feet, because what the customer is going to ask you can be a completely different question from what you've heard so far. So that essentially what it made me was a very good, if you will, a synthesizer of knowledge, right? So that's what I've become. But then I was having this conversation with a professor that's right now in Mahindra University, Professor Srinivas Pingali. I was telling them that it's very contradicting that you have to do all this research, but then you have to make it look like it's an impulsive thing that you're doing when you're doing a conversation with the client. And then we got talking, and he said, you know what, maybe you should try and do a PhD program. I actually did a guest lecture with his class at some point in time. And he said, you've done it quite well. Maybe this is something that you want to pursue. Why don't you want to consider this, etc., etc. So yeah, I debated internally, spoke to a couple of folks, and then eventually said yes. So yeah, it was not like one defining moment per se, but then a series of things that have happened which said, you know what, this is what I need to do. Yeah.
So how has your stint at Roundsquare, Microsoft Value Labs, and Signity has prompted you to undertake research more fluidly and more?
Yeah, like I said, I've always been that person who reads a lot, I guess. But then all through my professional career, I've just made a living on trying to understand what people are saying, interpreting it, making sense of it based on whatever knowledge that I've gained earlier, and thinking in examples. That's the kind of a person that I was, and that's what helped me in my professional career. So my stint in all these companies, it basically told me and kind of showed me that the more you talk, the more you learn, the better you get. And it is not something unique, right? I'm sure everybody understands that. It is just that I had the opportunity to be able to do something like that. I wasn't really a corner office person. I wasn't too big, I wasn't too small either. So being in that middle actually made me connect those dots, if you will. So I would owe all this enthusiasm to learn or enthusiasm to read, try and understand what the other person is saying. All of this I would attribute it to the work that I've done in all these companies so far. So I couldn't think of a better way to spend my career if I think back. Yeah.
So now let's talk about the school that you are in right now, the Mahindra University School of Management. So why Mahindra University?
Okay. The only question is why not? See, I am a Hyderabad-based person. It is closer home. There's a lot of flexibility. I today can go and meet the professors whenever I want. That's just more of a tactical thing. But like I said, I actually had a couple of conversations with professor at Mahindra University, Dr. Srini Pingali. I spoke to him, did a couple of classes with him earlier. So that got me acquainted with that school. In fact, I actually met the dean, Dr. Rama, as well, from Mahindra University. Before I got enrolled into the program, again, I was doing a guest lecture there at Mahindra for the BBM students. And then I met him. He was so warm, welcoming. And they're such accomplished people in academia, right? When I read through Professor bio, it was phenomenal. I ended up meeting Professor Nilanjan, who manages the PhD program. We got talking and he said, you know what, this is how the program is. You might be interested in it and things like that. What made me truly consider Mahindra University was the fact that all the professors that I've met, they were actually invested in the success of the program. So they were, it's very heartening, right? It's very heartening when somebody is saying, you've had this industry experience. We know you work very hard at what you do today. And this is going to be a major shift. And there is this synergy between academia and industry that needs to be made better and better. So yeah, they were all invested in me being a part of the program, me being successful in the program. And it looked to me like they were going to be a team. So I'm not going to be left alone. It's not like your typical PhD student who's banging the head against the wall, not knowing what to do. So yeah, the fact that there's flexibility, the fact that they're all accomplished people, and I've seen a very good synergy between academia and industry within Mahindra School of Management today. If you were to ask me the top 3 reasons, I would say these are the 3 reasons. Yeah.
So please share a little bit about your admission experience at Mahindra University.
Okay, so I guess the admission itself was a little bit of a roller coaster because originally when I started, I was in 2 minds. I wasn't sure if I will be able to cut it. Meaning I've studied some 20 years back and I'm going to be back in a classroom setting. And this is a long running program, right? It is not like a executive MBA or a quick 3 months course. So I had to be mentally prepared. So the admission experience for me was more about speaking to all these professors that I mentioned, and Professor Nilanjan, in fact, has been very, very helpful. He kind of talked me through the area of interest, the overall process itself. And more importantly, he warned me about the hardships. He was like, you know what, this is not like a simple program and you can't just like that make a decision. These are the series of steps that you have to go through and things like that. He was very, very nice about doing all that explanation, I guess. The interview process itself, that was very smooth, I would say, because I was a lot more prepared. I had a couple of conversations. It was not really overwhelming to do an interview sort of a setting. And this wasn't still a post-COVID era. So we did the interview remotely. So I was on a video and we were doing this remote. And then I had to, the panel was again, I had Dr. Rama on the panel. Of course, Professor Nilanjan was there. We had a few other assistant professors from Mahindra University also sit in because of my area of interest, because I come from this IT background. So there was MIS and strategy folks that were sitting in the panel as well. Then they were all very knowledgeable. In fact, when I started off and gave my introduction and they started asking me specific questions, it was very, very methodical. I actually ended up misinterpreting one of the question. I just assumed something else and started answering. In fact, the panel was very, very gracious. They said, you know what, that's not what we meant. This is what we wanted to ask you. And they gave me an opportunity to rephrase my answer and go through that all over again. So it was absolutely non-intimidating. It was very, very conversational. And in fact, they walked me through the process one more time, and they actually sent me a few articles and said, you know, this is the kind of stuff that you're going to be reading when you get into a PhD program. We want you to be comfortable. We want you to be aware of the hardships that this is going to entail, and be acquainted with the journey ahead, right? So So yeah, for me, the process, the admission was filling in the form, putting up the documents, creating that initial bio, all of that wasn't that very difficult. The interview process was extremely smooth. And yeah, and I guess it's, again, like I said earlier, it is because of the intent. It looked like they were all invested in my success. So for me, it was I would say, an extremely smooth process.
So this is so good to hear that there is a school that wants to put people in an aware and comfortable state before they start the program. Because otherwise,
Absolutely.
most of them go for the elimination thing, and then you feel that you are not fit for it. And here they
Correct.
are investing in you and making you fit for the program and making you aware that this is what you're going to enter into.
Absolutely. I can't thank them enough for that. Of course, I did send a profile. Of course, I did send areas of interest and write-ups and things like that ahead of time. But yeah, whatever elimination had to happen, I guess happened at that level. Once we started interacting and once we started speaking and we went through the process, it was more about why should you be in and how can you make this successful, rather than what are the reasons for me to reject you. So it was very, very pleasant that way.
Please tell us a little about your cohort and your fellows, research fellows.
Oh, they're all truly scholars. In fact, we keep joking that a couple of folks in the program actually are already PhD scholars in that sense. So it's a very good mix. It's a good mix of tech and non-tech folks. Again, we're doing this in the management school. So all of them are accomplished, clearly leaders in whatever fields that they've done, and they continue to work in. So we've had a couple of classes together. We're getting we've completed 3 residencies so far. We're getting 1 semester complete this month. So it is absolutely like going back to school with a bunch of friends that you've always known. They come from different perspectives, and we also have a full-time PhD scholar in the group. So he brings a lot of youthful energy to the group, I guess. So yeah, it is an eclectic mix. There's people from banking, there's folks that understand infrastructure, there's people from academic background, L&D, deep tech. It's phenomenal that way. If you have a bunch of people that are, again, as accomplished as they are, you always have something to learn just from the conversations. Yeah, so it's extremely motivating. Yes.
So how has it been like going back to the class again?
So it's peaks and troughs. That's what I will say. Some days I'm amazed. Oh, this is the kind of knowledge that you can gain. Some days I'm like, what did I get myself into? So yeah, there's this extremes that kind of I oscillate between. But then the classroom honestly hasn't lost its charm. And I'm truly grateful that we're going back to classes and it's not really remote. So the assignments and tests, they have absolutely not gotten any easier. So it's still daunting. Again, we have a class coming up next week and I still have a few assignments to finish. So I'm running those deadlines there, but enjoying the ride so far. So the classroom experience has been, again, great. And I guess it all depends on people that you have around and what kind of a shared knowledge do you have and stuff like that. But if you ask me one thing, it's made me humble. It's made me believe and truly act on the fact that I know very little. So yeah, it's been extremely enriching.
So the toughness of the class, I mean, has it made you a little more polite taskmaster at home for children?
No. I use this as an excuse to tell them if I can study, so can you.
Okay.
So I don't let them go easy anymore. Yeah.
Okay. So how has it changed your routine after joining the course?
So weekends are a blur. I have no recognition of what weekends are anymore. The weekdays, again, there is at least a week before the residency starts, there is a mad rush. There's a lot of coursework to complete. Every working hour, every non-working hour, and every waking hour is dedicated for this PhD program only. But one thing is for sure, I cannot complain that I'm bored and I have nothing to do. There's constantly something or the other to read and revise and write a discussant for, think about the thesis topic, and whole bunch of things that need to be done. So yeah, the routine has become hectic, but then the upside of it is a lot more organized. So now I know, because I have to do 5 other things, I know how I want to spend my time. Yeah, unless you're pushed to the edge, I guess you don't organize yourself quite well. But yeah, like I said, weekends absolutely a blur.
So how does the residency thing works at Mahindra University?
So yeah, we meet up once a month for 3 days in a week, typically a Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So we have pre-residency coursework that we need to finish, read stuff, write up assignments, get prepared for a test. In fact, our statistics prof, Professor Munir, he actually conducts tests every residency. So we go in and write a test first thing in the morning. So yeah, so sometimes I am worried about what he thinks of the test that we do. I pity him. He takes a lot of effort putting together those tests, and we probably don't live up to his expectations. But yeah, there are tests. So typically it is 3 days in a month sort of a classwork. But there's a lot of work that needs to be done before that classwork. And subsequently, we end up discussing, again, the way it is structured, again, it's, I guess, very, very unique. We have 3 subjects going on in parallel at any point in time. So it's not, so for example, in the first quarter, first 4 months, we have philosophy of science, we have statistics, and we have strategy. So there's a good mix of topics. So we're not kind of just bogged into statistics and not looking at anything else, sort of a thing. And yeah, like I said, there's grading, there's tests, there's classroom participation that gets assessed. And in fact, an extremely other interesting aspect that that Mahindra started doing is the industry experts and academia experts, right? Because these are all accomplished scholars and professors that have been in this academia for a while. We had an opportunity to meet up with some of their mentors, some of their colleagues from other colleges when they're visiting here, and things like that. So it's been phenomenal like that.
So now we move on to the admission process thing, the preparation thing. So how did you prepare for the interview and everything?
So ignorance is bliss. I did not know so much about the PhD program. So when I started preparation, I was looking at, yeah, I knew that I had to build on top of my professional experience. So my preparation was mostly focused on typically what is a curriculum like, figuring out what my area of interest is. So I had to kind of sit back and look at it and say, oh, okay, School of Management or management actually has a strategy, it has got entrepreneurship, it's got MIS. So basically, I will have to look at a particular area and kind of align my interest in that particular category. So I kind of read a few articles. I looked at a couple of papers and stuff like that. I realized it was a very, very hard thing to do. So for me, the preparation for admission was more about, again, developing a point of view and then developing a clear understanding of the program. So for the sake of admission, I did submit admissions for a few other universities as well. So I did do a synopsis. I did do an initial version of area of interest. I did create a profile or a bio, and of course answered questions like why PhD, why now, and all of that. So I was prepared in that sense, but it was more to do with getting myself acquainted and forming an opinion on the area of interest.
So any productivity hack for someone who is juggling between careers and planning to go for a PhD program?
I wouldn't say a hack, but it's more of a learning, right? So with this, and especially for people with a lot of experience, with extensive experience, there's also there'll also be a lot of bias, and you feel like you know a lot of stuff already. You feel like you know what, this has already been done. Oh, by the way, I did this in a particular customer enterprise, almost some 5 years back, 6 years back. So what you're telling me, this looks like very commonsensical and things like that. So for me, the biggest, if you were to ask me a suggestion, I would say for people that have extensive work experience, unlearning is very important. That would be my hack. Don't beat yourself up saying, oh, this is extremely boring stuff to read. This is not something that I'll be able to manage and internalize at all. Don't beat yourself on that. The way to read articles, I'm sure when you get into the program and when you kind of do that a couple of times, you'll get used to it. Stop yourselves from thinking that you know it all, and start spending time on actually reading. If you have to read something 3 or 4 times and internalize the author's point of view, please do it. Read it, reread it, read it as many number of times as it needs, because that's going to be crucial. So yeah, being able to not quickly judge and skim through stuff, but actually focus, that is, I think, going to be extremely critical. Don't beat yourself up. You'll get used to it after a while, and talk to people. If you have a cohort, if you have a fellow scholars that you work with, the way we do it today is, if there's 4 papers that we're talking about, each of us picks up one, or 2 of us pick up 1 paper each, and then when in the class we discuss it. So it makes it easier. So for me, I guess the productivity hack would be unlearn, read and reread, and talk to people, and collectively try and do it till you get used to it.
Oh, this reminds me of something a wise man once told me. Learn to do it the right way, then the shortest way.
Yeah, absolutely. There's definitely no shortcuts. There's definitely no shortcuts, and it'll actually become interesting and intriguing as you go through some of the stuff, and you're like, oh, I should have known about this 5 years back. I would have done something else at that point in time. So you will have your eureka moments. You just have to wait for it.
Yeah. What do interviewers look for in a candidate, if you have a view on it?
I would say, again, I think intent more than anything else. Knowledge obviously is something that can be acquired, but if the person has the intent, I think that's what they're trying to understand. Can you put the hard hours? Do you have the intent? That's what they're looking at doing. That's the only thing that they're checking. Of course, what's your area of interest? Of course, how do I align? Whom do I work with? How do I kind of academic still is very, very interdisciplinary. Overlaps are a little limited. So you need to know which discipline you fall under. So they're going to be asking questions in that context. But yeah, it's just to kind of bucket you and see where you can start off from. But I guess intent and what is your area of interest, those are the 2 things that they're probably looking for.
So 3 things that you covered it very beautifully. So our experience shows with all the scholars is that 3 things. One is intent, second is the staying power, and third one is the homework. How much do they believe in the homework thing?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like you were mentioning, right? There is no way you're going to skim through stuff, and people who have done engineering, at least in India, probably know it. 4 years goes by in a blur. You're like, oh, I'm an engineer. So that's not going to cut it. Yeah, that's absolutely not going to cut it.
It was great interacting with you. Now we move on to the last phase of the interview, which is the rapid fire thing. A small game where we do the quick things and then we zoom past it. And people surely love this one because we have data about people doing the reruns of the rapid fire thing.
Okay.
An early morning ritual or practice.
A cup of tea and a newspaper.
Okay. A must-have thing on your desk item. A must-have item on your desk.
A book and a pen.
What do you do when you are stressed or overwhelmed?
Watch a random mindless movie.
Okay. What is your latest purchase to increase your productivity?
An Apple Watch. I don't know how much it is helping, but it cost a lot.
Your favorite book or the one you are currently reading?
My favorite book would be The Range, and that's not something that I'm currently reading, but The Range is an extremely interesting book that I've read, and I'd recommend a lot of people read it as well. It's phenomenal. It tells you that you don't have to have your calling on day one. You can discover as you go along. So,
Great. So
yeah.
we are surely going to bookmark this one in the description. Your favorite quote that keeps you motivated?
I don't know if it's really a quote, but I go by the phrase called Uja Day, not the deja vu, the complete opposite of that. So there's nothing wrong in doing the same thing as long as you're doing it differently. So do the same thing, but do it differently and keep it interesting.
Great. So any movie that you would recommend anyone to watch when they are stressed and overwhelmed?
Andaz Apna Apna if you're a Hindi buff.
Okay.
Otherwise, I guess any random mindless comedy is good enough. Just don't get too invested in the movies. Yeah.
Great. Any parting thoughts?
Today, I guess more than any other time in the history of mankind, I don't know where we'll end up. This generation, if you will, is in the cusp of being the only people, at least people in my age, we are the only people who've seen world before the telephone, before the mobile phone and after the mobile phone, before the internet, after the internet. I think it's extremely crucial, critical, mandatory for us to impart that knowledge and not look like people from some other era completely who are clueless. So people from my age group, or for that matter, any age group, I'd recommend stay in the present. Absolutely stay in the present. Don't get too very nostalgic. Don't get too bothered about what the future holds. It's going to go very crazy, hopefully. But then it doesn't matter. Stay in the present, learn, and keep reinventing yourself. I guess that's what I would want to say.
That's great. That was Miss Sirisha P for you, and we are sure that you all are going to love watching this one.
It's great to see you all here. Thank you for watching our work. If you have not subscribed to Inkpothub Media, then please hit the bell icon and subscribe to our channel and support research celebrations in India.